Hello, I'm Robert, and I'm the from Doomsday Debunked on Facebook, where we fact-check stories that scare people. And many of the people we help are also getting help from psychologists, and the treatment is very effective when they get the right diagnosis. But when they get the wrong diagnosis, then things can, it doesn't help at all, and it sometimes makes things much worse. And the main thing that they say their psychologists have not understood, they haven't been able to explain to their psychologists, is quite how scared they are of these stories. So if someone is showing this video to you, then this is what they want me to help you, to tell you, to show to you what the problem is. They are so scared that some of them are diagnosed as having post-traumatic stress disorder just from the psychological trauma of reading something on the internet. And psychologists seem to find that quite hard to believe, but that is exactly what happens. And when they're often misdiagnosed, the ones who are misdiagnosed with various other conditions, and they get the wrong treatment, and that is very striking what the difference is when someone who has been misdiagnosed gets the correct diagnosis. The misdiagnosed ones continue being very scared, and they sometimes get more and more terrified. When they get the correct diagnosis, then we can tell from our end that the treatment has been very effective. Instead of maybe they were posting in the group several times a day, and then they stop having these frequent panic attacks many times a day, and then over days, weeks, it's very dramatic what a difference makes. It's obvious that the treatment for PTSD is very effective. So they need the right diagnosis. Now the person, obviously I'm not saying what the diagnosis is for whoever is showing this to you, but what is missing is that they feel that they haven't managed to communicate quite how scared they are. So some of these things that they are scared of, like World War III, for instance, then it's understandable, although it was completely wrong, that during the Trump-Iran thing, that many people thought World War III would break out, and there were lots of stories about that. If you literally believed that World War III might break out at any minute, of course you'd be scared. So it wasn't true. We helped with the fact-checking. And I'd like to talk a little bit about some more difficult ones to recognise, because it's not so widely known. First of all, the asteroid warning. So if you go into Google and search, you can try that, search in the news tab of Google for NASA asteroid warning, and this is the example as of today. And if you have a look around, lots of warnings. It would seem that NASA has given dozens of warnings that an asteroid is about to hit Earth, including, and here's a warning that an asteroid will hit Earth, and warning against, NASA issues warning against 5 more deadly asteroids these are absolutely terrifying stories. They are all fake. There's no truth to any of them. I think that Google should have a fact check there. NASA have never issued any asteroid warning as of Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020. Now, your patient, if in this case, suppose they were scared of asteroids, then they don't have this fact check. They don't know. They go and read all these stories one after another. This is the Daily Express, it's a red top tabloid, it does fake news. And they will typically spend hours a day reading these fake stories about asteroids. They get absolutely terrified. They believe that this is describing what NASA has said will happen, and they can have, for instance, a student take a semester off work and have to spend the time at home. They get scared to leave their house. So I want to talk now about some of the things some of the symptoms. They often are scared to leave their house because they feel if an asteroid was to hit Earth, they won't be at home. Or various other reasons. They just don't feel safe. Or maybe they only leave the house with other people. And they can be, they have nightmares. So certainly nightmare therapy may be something that is worth exploring. They can have there can be there are frequent panic attacks during the day. And so I'm not saying all the people have all these symptoms, but these are things that whoever's showing this may possibly have any of these. And they can be vomiting with fear, they can be unable to eat very well, they may find difficulty sleeping. In the worst case, we've had people who have had to go to hospital because they couldn't eat and being drip fed. And they're often suicidal, not like everyone is, but suicidal thoughts are quite common, and then sometimes they get very suicidal. And they get very obsessive. So these are all things that need help with. And it's entirely because they have believed Google News, which they think is authoritative. They read it on their mobile phone or whatever, on their tablet, and then they believe this, and then they read it obsessively. And that is the entire source. It's not something they self-generate in their own minds. So it's not a psychosis. Not if someone comes and they say they think an asteroid is about to hit Earth and destroy it and kill everyone. And it's not because they believe that a movie is going to happen in real life. It's because they see it in the news. And this is the page I did to help them. You can check any moment, and there are no asteroid warnings, just an interface to the very techy NASA page, which is hard to understand. So then I just want to talk quickly about a few other examples. So this is the example of a Superflare. Now, they watch a movie called The Knowing, and they might think, oh, that's just a fun, scary story, and they treat it as fiction. But then they go and search on the internet, and they find these stories saying that there's something very similar is going to happen to Earth in the very near future. Could a solar superflare destroy the world? It's not quite the same as the Knowing story, but they don't know to distinguish the difference. And this is actual, based on actual science, but it's not true. So I just want to quickly give the background to this, so you can understand. It's just one example of many such stories. So what happened here is that a few years back, scientists discovered that some sun-like stars, distant sun-like stars, not ours, have these flares in which they get 100 times brighter. If that happened on Earth, then it would melt the rocks on the moon, it would melt the ice on Europa's moons, and it would be absolutely devastating for Earth, and everyone would die probably, or just about everyone. Well, this has obviously not happened on Earth, because the rocks on the moon are not melted, and the icy moons, the ice isn't melted. So the question for the astronomers was, why hasn't this happened on Earth when they see it on other stars? But the way it was put in the sensationalist press was, astronomers have discovered that the Earth is about to be hit by a superflare. And then eventually the astronomers discovered the reason. Ours is the wrong kind of sun. It's similar in similar size, similar brightness, similar stage in its life, but it's older actually than most of them, and it's rotating too slowly. Its magnetic field is wrong, its sunspots are wrong, the way it spins is wrong, and it can't do a superflare. But very few people, if you go and search on the internet, you won't find that information I just told you. Not very easily. You have to be very techy and know exactly how to search for such things before you can find it. You'll find all these YouTube videos saying that a superflare is about to destroy the Earth in the near future. So this is not, if someone comes and tell you that the sun is about to get very bright and destroy the Earth, it's not psychosis. Most likely it's not. It's most likely it's because they read it on the internet and believed it. So I just give another couple of examples. So this one would certainly seem very, if someone came in and told you about this one, then you would think, very, very, well anyway, it's a very strange idea. I think that the person himself may well have some kind of issues, this Montaigne, but he had told everyone that on the 21st of December last year, that the Earth's crust is going to slip, and he's based it on numbers from the Mayan Prophecy and taking a number from the Bible and adding them together and saying this means that on the 21st of December the Earth's crust is going to slip, and many people in the Northern Hemisphere will find themselves in the Southern Hemisphere, and there'll be endless earthquakes and all sorts of horrible things. He said this was going to continue for a week, and he made this claim on the basis of claiming he's a prophet and can see the future, not based on science, and based on numbers in the Bible, and saying he has decoded the Bible and decoded the Mayan prophecies, and this is what they're going to do. Now, so if you've got a strong scientific background, you can just see it's nuts. But if you haven't, then this idea that someone can see the future can be quite prophetic, can be quite convincing. And especially if they combine it with the Bible and people's belief in Jesus, and he told them that Jesus at the end is going to appear, and 1 billion Christians will go up into heaven, and everyone else is left behind to live a horrible life in this disastrously transformed earth. And there's no basis for any of this. The theology is wrong, of course, and the science is nuts. So I've got this debunked. You can read why the science is nuts, but we help with the debunking. But the thing is, I just want to make the point that these people, and if someone comes in and says that, they believe it because they read it on the internet, and because they believe this person who talks in a very authoritative way. He seems a very ordinary kind of a chap on his YouTube videos. He seems absolutely sure of himself, and he comes over in a very personable way, very friendly, personable, believable, and these people believe him. And then he has lots of people who sort of follow him and say, yes, he's right. Social pressure, a personable person who may well have some kind of psychosis himself, but the person who's telling you has not. They're just believing it because of that. And this was another one, which is another story. It's very similar, and so I don't want to get up with too much, but this is another a very similar, absolutely crazy one. So if you come to Doomsday Debunked just before this story, then he was telling them such a nuts idea. And this is when the Freemasons, of course, are mainly white and live north of the equator. He said that they had a secret plan to kill all white people north of the equator. It doesn't make any sense. It's totally illogical, totally silly. He said that a world monarch who's in charge of everything is going to order the United States to use a secret weapon that they've developed, a heat ray, to kill everyone north of the equator. I mean, this would seem paranoid. It would seem psychotic. I don't know. I can't imagine how you would diagnose someone who comes in and says, I'm just saying I can understand that if someone comes in and says something like that to you, say, I'm absolutely terrified because of all this, I can well understand that a psychiatrist or psychologist would think they have some deep psychosis of some sort and paranoia. But that's not why people believe this in our group. They didn't believe that at all for that reason. They just believed it because all their friends were saying this, and because this person was saying it on the internet with great conviction. And it seemed to them that it must be true, and then they knew that it was nonsense, but their mind is panicking and very confused, and they panic attacks several times a day over this, absolutely terrified, searching, and everyone online is saying it's going to happen. And there's so many strange things, and they just say, well, I'm not very good at assessing such things, and they believe it on those grounds, really. And again, they're absolutely terrified by that. So if you came to our group just before either of those things, it'd be absolutely full of people believing those things. Nowadays, and right now, it's mainly climate change, and it has been for most of the last year. So this is one where the actual psychologists themselves have actually believed the fake news. So this is someone called Jem Bendel, and he's a sociologist. He's not a psychologist. He's not a climate scientist. And his paper was rejected for peer review because he refused to bring it up to basic academic standards. It's never been published, and yet the dozens of psychologists who are using his paper in their therapy as if it was by the IPCC. they tell their patients that what he says is correct. He tells this, he is the inspiration for the Extinction Rebellion, who go into schools and tell children, appallingly, that unless we reach carbon zero in 5 years, which any child will recognise is just not something that is very at all plausible that the world will do that. And they say that unless that happens, then the world will suddenly heat up hugely. We'll have mass famines. We won't be able to feed people in the UK, and probably billions will die, and probably we might even have human extinction in 5 years. That is what young kids of our time are being told by adults who go in and speak very authoritatively and tell them these things. And it is just based on this paper by a professor with very nutty ideas. It is not even a worst case scenario. It's absolutely impossible. And it's nothing to do with what the IPCC say. There's nothing in the IPCC report about billions of people dying. So, please, do check and get your people to fact check them. So this is a situation where you have therapists encouraging patients to cope with false beliefs instead of challenging them. And we even have a whole series of articles on the BBC encouraging psychologists to encourage patients to cope with false beliefs. What strange times we live in. So, again, please do not tell your patients that it is correct what the Extinction Rebellion say. Get them to fact check with the IPCC. So, anyway, those are the main things that I wanted. I'll put a link to this in the video description. I think I've gone through everything. So just a few final remarks. That the main problem that that the people who come to our group have is the obsession, flashbacks. They have panics. Sometimes they're panics that come from nowhere. There are many of our members are autistic, about 1 in 4, and you can well understand. So if I'll go back to the NASA Asteroid warning one. So you can well understand that someone who is autistic, they have a tendency towards OCD anyway, and a small social network in real life, and they have very little to kind of counterbalance the searches and the things they find on the internet. Anyway, for whatever reason, about 1 in 4 of our people that we help are autistic. It could even be higher than that. And then the main problem they have is getting stuck in a rut with the thinking. And even when you have the fact checking, then even when they know the story is incorrect, then they still have the problem of trying to deal with these ideas that are getting stuck in their mind. And then the other people that mainly affect us, that we mainly find are affected, are people who are very imaginative and very empathic, and they often have nightmares. And it's possible. I mean, for instance, dream therapy could well be something worth investigating for some of the people. And they often wake up with I'm scared. So we one person I helped. He woke up. He had he had all these things, and he was diagnosed. He wasn't diagnosed, but his psychologist thought possibly schizophrenia, and you can imagine by all the strange things he believed, as it seemed, and also paralysed on waking up. But that apparently can be a symptom of PTSD. And when I asked him why he felt he couldn't move, he said he was just absolutely scared, and it was because of fear that he couldn't move. Like a terrified animal, and he could move a little bit. He could actually move, but just terrified to get up. So that again might confuse with psychosis, but it isn't. That's like an extreme PTSD kind of a symptom of being so terrified that you're afraid to get out of your bed. You're afraid to move because you think something very just the instinctive feeling of some animal about to kill you or something. You pretend you're dead. I think it's that. Anyway, just to bear in mind, if you get that symptom, then to investigate a little bit further. Anything else? Oh, I think I should just stop. There's plenty here to get you on the right lines. It's already 20 minutes, and yes, it's the obsessions, the flashbacks, the panics. They often have panic attacks several times a day, and they need help with those, and how to deal with panic attacks, how to deal with obsessions, practical things about, they don't like vomiting. What can you do to stop yourself from vomiting? And dream therapy, help with beginning to leave the house if they've got so scared they don't leave the house anymore and are stuck at home. These are sort of things that they need help with, and then also just dealing with the flashbacks and the terror and the absolute fear. And when they get the right treatment, then they can get over all of this very quickly. Like I hear from people who were afraid to leave their house a few months ago, who are now just leading normal lives again. And this is very, very treatable if this is indeed if it is mainly based on these panics that are based on fake news. So anyway, I'll end now.